To order. This is our workshop meeting for the Board of Supervisors, Wednesday, August 27th. And this is our strategic planning kickoff workshop, part 3 for parks. If you please stand and join us for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have roll call, please, Miss Scarlett?
Scarlett Cantley,
Jeff Sisolak,
Frank Palin, Richard Vasilati,
Elizabeth Accomando.
Trisha Farrell.
Betty Argue,
Kenny Lawrence.
Burgess Hanson, Mr. Johnson called, he had an emergency, so he's asking for an excused absence.
Absolutely.
Thomas Lanahan, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council.
Kim Delaney, Treasure Coast Region.
Welcome. Before we get started, I just want to say happy birthday to Miss Scarlett. I hope you had a beautiful day and day off. So, and also I'd like to take a moment. There's a terrible tragedy today in Minnesota, where someone went up and shut up a church, and 2 very young children lost their lives. So if you could reflect on that for a moment, and hope this world will become a better place. Okay, welcoming remarks, Betty.
I don't have one, thank you.
Richard.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for all the compliments on my shirt to represent our parks meeting. I got sunshine, palm trees, and some alligators. Hopefully we don't have too many alligators at our parks, maybe coconut. But thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you both for coming and joining us and helping us plan our community strategically. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to our resident that's here to listen. We will not have public comment tonight. In our wrap-up meeting, of course, we will then be having public comment once we bring the public into this. This is more for the board to talk and just garner ideas along with Mr. Lanahan and Dr. Delaney. So thank you, and let's get right to it. This meeting has a hard stop at 8 o'clock, so we'll try to be as efficient as possible so we can get through the whole thing. So Dr. Delaney, take it away.
So we are on workshop number 3 for the strategic planning process. And because there's so much detail, the board has broke for the benefit of the public. That a little better.
Okay.
How's that? Is that a little better? Gosh, I hear myself now. That's for sure. So super. So for the record, Kim Delaney from Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. And thank you again for the opportunity to assist the board in these discussions. We are on workshop number 3, what was intended to be just a single workshop, but there's so much detail. We've broken the board input workshops into 3 sections to give the board a chance to really get into the details of how ITID operates. So I have just a couple of opening slides, really for the benefit of the public, just to kind of set the context for the discussion. And then the format for tonight, which is a format that we've used in the prior workshops, is to give the board a series of discussion questions and then work with you as you talk through issues so that we can identify the policy directions that should be explored in the strategic plan. Just a reminder, especially with parks, because it's so very detailed. There's always a capital improvements focus when you get into facilities like park facilities, and that's important, but it's really not the focus for tonight. The focus for tonight is to stay higher level, to lay out those policy directions for the board to explore as you implement your work related to parks and recreational facilities. So I just wanted to just give a reminder to the really to the public as to expectations for tonight. Okay. And Tom, do you have anything to add opening? So, okay. And so just,
I think it's amusing. We thought we could do this in 1 minute.
When? It just occurred to me, but anyway.
So that's from the optimism, right? So, but there's not enough caffeine to get everybody through that in one night for sure. And it's really, I think it's made for a much better process because it's given the board and the public a chance to really kind of think through the details of transportation and infrastructure, stormwater and drainage, and now parks and recreation as priorities for the board. And in fact, on my slide here, the agenda for tonight, just a couple of words on an overview of strategic planning. Again, more for the benefit of the public than the board, but all part of the public discussion. We've completed 2 workshops now, one on the transportation and administration activities of the district, and the second on stormwater and drainage activities. And so tonight is to really zoom into parks and recreation. And then we will continue some additional public outreach with agencies and partners to the district to be able to bring back a set of recommended strategic goals, objectives, and priorities for the board's consideration. Okay. And so just, of course, a map of Palm Beach County, zooming in on ITID out in the western portion of Palm Beach County, of course, unincorporated, surrounded by incorporated municipalities, which are in the colored polygons around the district. Pardon me. A little background as to the district's just find out. There we go.
So many floating things.
There's a lot of floating things on my screen, so apologies to the public. So the district, of course, was created in 1957. It has 110 square miles roughly. It's overseen by a board of supervisors, and we're at that meeting this evening. And as an unincorporated large area in Palm Beach County, for the district to carry out its mission, there's the need for coordination with many external parties because the district's responsibilities are fairly limited and they're very specific, but the demands on the district are on par with the kinds of demands that municipalities have. And so the only way to carry out those responsibilities is with a really well orchestrated coordination with other parties that has definition to it and clarifies expectations. Pardon me. There, of course, are about 33 square miles of active units and about 50,000 residents currently living in Indian Trail. And with respect to schedule, we are in bar number 3. And so we began this process earlier this year with some due diligence. We kicked off with the board. We conducted a series of stakeholder interviews with entities that the district coordinates with, and those are continuing. As we have these conversations with the board, we get sometimes more questions than answers, and that's a good thing. That's a function of this type of process. We've undertaken background research, and that will continue as we develop a plan for the board. And we are in a public workshop series where we've finished 2 workshops the first part of the summer, and workshop number 3 is this evening. After that, we'll be coming back to you in the fall with a draft strategic plan for the board to review. That will be in a public meeting. The board will have the opportunity to take public comment. We will try to accomplish that in one meeting, but if it takes more than one, that's okay. So there's a lot to say about strategic planning. So we're available to the board to carry through that conversation with you and the public, and then ultimately get you to a point where you have a strategic plan to consider for adoption. Okay. And the components of a strategic plan are listed on this slide. So there's a mission and vision, which the board has defined. ITID has a mission statement and a vision statement. Strategic priorities, though, is an area where this process is designed to collect all of those different priorities that exist in different documents, different actions the board's taken, to kind of rationalize them into a planning document that you then can help benchmark and see how you're doing. So setting a set of priorities and then giving you a set of measures that you can use to kind of see how you're doing. And if you need to adjust those priorities over time, it gives you that insight as a board. It's intended to help make your decision-making more rational, more transparent and easy for the public to follow, and also to leave a record for board members that follow you so that there's a clear explanation as to why you arrived and why certain policy activities are underway. And to help create that history of action for the public and for your fellow board members. And so with that, diving into today's discussion, this slide illustrates all the different types of things that we've identified as areas to explore with respect to strategic priorities. And tonight's focus is on parks and recreation. Again, for the benefit of the public, there's a very detailed discussion about transportation, pardon me, followed by one on drainage and stormwater. That information is available as a matter of public record. The notes that were taken during those workshops are now in the possession of ITID and available to the public if you want to kind of follow the discussion along. Tonight's discussion is focused on parks and recreation and just a couple of background maps. Pardon me, the area of the district illustrated on this first map. The location of your park facilities. This is from your website. On the second map, so if the public is interested, this information is posted on the district's website. We just pulled it into this presentation, make it easier to access. And so the location of the parks distributed across the district, of course. There we go. And then also on the district's website is a series of informational items that detail the location of the various parks and the services and facilities that are provided in them. And so I just collected that information to make it available to us if we want to use it tonight in the discussion. And so the parks, of course, include Acreage Community Park, the Harful Park, Citrus Grove, Coconut Park, Hamlin House, which also is co-located with the Hornstein Center. Can't read it here. There we go. Downers Park, Kidscape Park. There we go. Sycamore Park and Temple Park. And so there is one concept plan that we were able to access for tonight's discussion because there aren't really concept plans that exist in an inventory for the other parks. Might be one of the things for the board to talk about, which is thinking about master planning those facilities, getting a good inventory of what's out there and what you might want down the road. Acreage Community Park has a concept plan that's been developed. Tonight's discussion isn't meant to advocate for what's described in the concept plan, but we wanted to be sure that it was available to you as a board to consider as part of your discussion. Let's just move this up.
Frank, Acreage Community Park is more than a concept plan. It's a development order that's adopted and the board adopted phases, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to state that for the record.
Thanks for that clarification. And so in addition to the plan for Acreage Community Park, there is a network map available on the ITID website that shows the equestrian trails and how they interconnect through the district to the various destinations. There is one other background document that's from the board's mobility plan, and that is the future potential improvements to the equestrian networks. We pulled that in, so we had that for discussion as well, that identifies some additional connections as well as crossings the board may want to consider, all related to park and recreational activities of the district. Okay. So those are the background slides, and we have that information to use as part of the discussion. And there are a couple of discussion questions that we wanted to pose to the board just to kind of trigger the discussion for tonight. For the benefit of the public, tonight's format for the workshop is a facilitated discussion. We as the staff to the district in this will scribe notes on PowerPoint slides. So we have that as part of the record. And then again, the discussion is intended for board members, not for the public to engage at this point, but certainly the public is welcome to listen in via Zoom or in person. And then ultimately we'll take this information and kind of crunch it into a strategic plan for the board. So with that, a couple of discussion questions, high level. One, how should the district approach the provision of park facilities? It's a very general question, but it's a policy question for the board. How should you determine your priorities? There are facilities that you provide and facilities that are provided in partnership with others. So how should you go about working through your priorities as a board? What should your relationship be with Palm Beach County, particularly related to Acreage Community Park? It's a heavy lift. to construct all of the improvements that are identified in Acreage Community Park. So how your relationship develops with Palm Beach County has been a theme, frankly, in the strategic planning discussions that we've had with the board. And so specifically related to parks and recreation is the subject for tonight. But there's that larger Palm Beach County relationship to continue to explore in your plan. So, and then also, how should your park assessment fees be carried forward? You've had a lot of discussion about the fee structure of the district and the complexities in billing and collecting, the equity of how fees are distributed and assigned. And so that's another area where the board may want to spend a bit of time. So is the fee structure as you have it 100% dead on, or are there adjustments that are necessary? And if so, what are the areas where those adjustments might be appropriate? So those are just some high level discussion questions for the board. I'll pause because I've done a lot of talking and look to Burgess to see if Burgess, those are the areas that we should start to explore with the board, or if there's anything we should add.
No, I think that's more than enough for tonight. So, yeah.
We have till 8 p.m.
Yep.
So beautiful. So, okay, Tom, anything to add to that overview?
Nope.
So, alrighty. So what I'm going to do is adjust this presentation to let us take notes with you and look to your feedback. There you go. So maybe start with priorities, right? Priorities for the park system. How do you guys feel as board members with respect to the provision of park facilities as a district? How are you doing versus what you'd expect to see or ideally see as residents and as board members?
So one of my biggest concerns, and I'm learning more about it, is the south expansion with Palm Beach County in our lease agreement. The restrictions that are involved with it, the lease, and how to move forward with that. Whether this is something that we want to continue with them, with the county, as far as a lease, look into maybe somehow trying to obtain ownership of the park. From what I understand, and I'll let Mr. Hanson and Mr. Lawrence help me out with this a little bit. From years back, there were agreements made with this south expansion as far as the community center and things that ITID had to do in order to keep this going. And we're not there yet with it. And we're talking millions and millions of dollars of upgrades that I don't think this district has right now. So what's our avenue? Where are we going with this south expansion park? And maybe Mr. Hanson and Mr. Lawrence can add a little bit of history to that and how we're going to move forward with the south expansion. That's one of my bigger concerns.
Want to pause and dive into that, or do you want to go across the days first? Put some big issues out.
Yeah, I think we should dive in.
Dive into that one? Okay. It's a big subject.
Yeah, yeah.
So as we've had conversations over past months that you've been on the board, you know, there are phases for south expansion. Trying to think of how I can go over it without going into a lot of detail. So when the city or district agreed to lease this, as Mr. Palin, Ms. Argue had said, there are certain amenities that are within that plan, that site plan that was basically approved by the county. And there's certain timelines that have to be met in the implementation of that. So with a community center, splash pad, tennis courts, BMX, pump track, or whatever they call it, skate park, the horse trail, tennis courts, basketball courts, what else? And second multi-purpose field. So we're talking, you know, probably years of implementation of that. And I think the focus has to be, how do you pay for it? I mean, that's been my biggest concern. Yep. So And that's why during the budget workshop process, particularly this year, you said you gotta start looking at these like they're buckets and you gotta fill the bucket. So which bucket do you want to fill? You have stormwater, roads and parks. So, and there's a lot that needs to be filled in all three buckets. So that's kind of the approach. The FCT, I know in the past when we were going through incorporation, one of the things that we tried to talk to the county about, you know, could we take ownership of that section so we don't have to go through the county owned department anymore? FCT does not allow special districts to necessarily own or train where it can be transferred from the county. So that becomes an issue where we're having to deal with our own. And we are still working on that with the state of Florida to see where that is. If there were to be an opportunity where we could potentially purchase it, where the county purchase it, then the county could hand it over to us if they so desired, because it is connected to the fire station across the street and to the acreage library as well. So, yeah, I don't know how much more you want to know.
No, and and isn't there a timeline or is there a deadline with some of the amenities that were agreed upon in the past, such as a BMX park? What year, or what date is that supposed to be completed? Am I accurate with that? Is there a certain?
The county, Deb Drummond and all them basically asked the district to come up with a timeline of what we expect to be able to hit each one of those phases. So like Burgess was saying, our biggest problem is going to be that community center. How do we fund that? We could probably get the little ones over the years, but that one's going to be an issue. And one of the concerns I have is if we can't get these done, we have this lease agreement with them. They could potentially take the park if we can't hit these phases possibly. So it is something that should be in the back of everybody's mind personally, but I mean.
And how much is the community center?
Through the chair, I just have to correct something here. The lease agreement is not tied to specific developments of the park. That is not my recollection. And we got a development order for the development of that park. And the last amendments that we made for Acreage Community Park South, we specifically put phasing in place and there were no dates tied to any of it.
That's why I just said that.
Okay, so
Frank,
this whole idea that if we don't do something by a certain deadline, that we're gonna lose the park, I think the county would have a very different.
Nobody said lose the park. I'm just asking a question.
No, that
Hold
was
on.
what was
Hold on,
stated.
can we
So
hear-
I'm just trying
Hold on.
to
okay,
clarify it.
thank
You need
you.
to relax. I'm answering something.
All right, please,
God.
I want to hear, everybody to hear from the attorney exactly what it is.
I agree with Supervisor Argue that there's no, and I'm not aware of any deadline for the completion of any of the phases that we placed on the sequential development of facilities at the park. We have essentially a 99-year lease with it's in phase in segments, but it extends out over the
Over 99
over
years.
roughly 99 years.
Okay, thank you.
That's good to know.
But
Correct. That's correct. And then whatever we do in there also has to be reviewed by the state because the restrictive covenants that were placed on the property when the county acquired all that land.
which is where I was going to bring up next, are the restrictions. And so would you go into more detail with that so everybody understands? I know we've discussed this plenty of times before, but for anybody new that's listening and for the purpose of this strategic plan, what those restrictions are.
I don't have a copy of the agreement with me at the moment, but
So,
well, essentially the overall acreage in there that we're leasing a portion of a much larger site, which the county acquired in stages, but they used for a large portion of it grants that are of funds that they've received from Florida FC.
Florida Trust.
Florida Trust, which is Community Trust, which is a state agency. And so as part of the conditions of the counties acquiring the property, using those grant funds from the state, and we accepted as a tenant on that property, conditions on what can be built in it, which is defined in a master plan, which was approved by the counties through basically the zoning process, through a development order that applies to the whole property. So we have like multiple, that Acre Community Park South is really the only park facility that I'm aware of that we have significant restrictions in terms of our relationship with the county. So and then when we leased we have no ownership of the property other than this long-term lease agreement that we have. But that lease agreement was complicated because it also involved other properties that, the districts are negotiated with the county, the library site, the fire station across the way here. They were all tied into a much larger transaction. So, which we could prepare a report to the board explaining all the details on what those relationships are. So it's Acres Community Park South is a complicated situation in terms of who has authority over the future development of the park.
Thank you. And
Can I ask Mr. Pale a question?
yeah.
So as far as some of the amenities that were talked about in the past, the splash pad, the BMX, tennis courts, is anybody going to twist our arm if we don't put these in a community center? How much is a community center? Was it like $20 million, something like that?
Well, I think the community center basically was traded off. Well, there is a portion of the Acres Community Park South site that's exempt from the restrictions, the FCP restrictions. And on that site, which is kind of adjacent, there's like 3 acres. I can't remember the exact amount of it that are essentially targeted for where a community center could have built. The state restrictions essentially limit the park to relatively passive facilities. This is that area that's exempt from those conditions is the one place where you could actually build a building and have much more active activity, but it's expensive. It'd be quite an expensive facility. We could still theoretically place a community center there.
But as ITID going to be forced to eventually one day have to put any of these amenities into that park?
No one's being forced.
Okay.
We do have to get them approved, and they are shown on the plan.
So there's no penalties if we decide not to put in a BMX park or a splash pad or a community center because we can't afford it?
No, they're not going to force you to spend money on it.
But
those facilities, the ones that haven't been built, I think theoretically could be revised. But you'd have to go back through that whole process of getting those reviewed. We're not committed to anything like BMX. Recreational tastes change over time. So, and it's been quite a few years. So they were developed through a process of the board talking to the community on what they wanted to see, I think. And if the community going into the future wanted to have different facilities or replace them, I think it could be done for the parts that haven't been built. It's not like a master plan is a absolute, it's not like a deed restrictions that have to be built that way.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'd also, I just also want to add to that about additional restrictions of funds. The funds in that restricted area all have to go back to the park. So you can't do anything, any type of selling or anything like that in this restricted area unless the money goes back to the park. So that's another issue that we have there. The only area that is open that does not apply is the amphitheater area up to the sidewalk and then out into the parking lot directly in front of that grassy area and the amphitheater, but not quite to the driveway area or roadway area within, beyond the parking lot. So it's a very small area, and that's why when you see events out there, it's all clustered right there. This way, any vendors that go have the opportunity, the vendors aren't going to go and say, oh, here you go, I just did all this work and bought all this stuff or made all this stuff, and here you go, Neanderthal, here's the money. right? So anything we do in that respect has to go there. And that's why we've talked about in the past, well, how do we address the leagues using the fields? Because the money is supposed to go back to the park. So this is something that we never really resolved, with the new multi-purpose field that is in the restricted area. So we have to figure that out. But Burgess, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So I believe what Mr. Lawrence was referring to was there's certain mitigation aspects of this with exotic vegetation removal and then replacement of certain other types of material that we need to comply with that was part of, I don't know that it was necessarily part of the lease, but it was certainly part of an agreement. So and that's been part of the issue with we've been asking them to reopen the gate through the preserve, through the Acreage Pine Preserve, which they're responsible for, so people can go through it either on horseback or on foot. They will not do it. They're saying it used to be upon completion of phase one, but now they're trying to reel that back and say, oh no, it's completion of the entire park, which was never the case. So.
I'm looking for it. I do have an email from Deb. I'm trying to find it. I can provide it to you guys once I have it. That asked for a timeline of everything.
So I think Frank and I are the only ones in this room that actually were kind of here, and it started long before I did, the history on this park. But in the last go around, when we did the last amendments and we put the track in the multi-purpose fields, we were advised by our attorney that we could use the park the way we intended to use the park. So the fact that there has been this thing that has come up, which has not been properly reported to the board, by the way, I would like the details. I would like all the communication regarding this, because I have a lot of communication that goes back to talking about that horse trail being opened after we finished that phase of the construction that we were in. So trying to go back on that is not right. We spent money, taxpayer dollars, to build equestrian trails that are not accessible. They're not accessible as they were prior to the beginning of construction, and they're not accessible after construction. And there's portions that is supposed to be maintaining, and they're not. And they're not holding up their end of the bargain. And then there is the equestrian trailhead, which the board has on multiple occasions directed that we wanted that equestrian trailhead completed so that we could get that access. The other part, the other condition that was made that we negotiated the last time around, because we did not have the sufficient funds to pave the whole parking lot and put all of the curbing and all of the lighting and all of the trees that the county wanted, they agreed to allow us to do the fire, we call it the fire drive aisle. That's the drive aisle that's there that goes around the milled area. Our argument with the county then, and I think that our county commissioner should be helping on this issue. I don't understand why we need to have a city parking lot in our rural area. We don't need curbs and lighting and trees the way you would in an HOA or in Westlake. Okay. And so fortunately we got them to agree on that drive aisle. That was a compromise. But the other thing they said was that they were not going to allow us to open the second entrance, which was a last minute amendment that they did in our development order, until we paved 140th. And that phase had to be completed. So we've completed the phase, but 140th was not paved yet. So once it's paved, the agreement with the county, and this is a condition that is on the development order, was that they would allow us to open up that second entrance. As far as the additional phases, we purposely, because it costs a lot of money every time you go through and you change that. And so the board spent a lot of time, that the last time we went through the amendment process, because we realized it was so expensive and so time consuming, we made sure that we were not tied to doing this next or that next or this next or that next. We put it, this is going to be a phase, but we could choose which one we wanted to do. We were not tied. Now, there are certain things that are tied to certain parts of the project. So for example, if the district wanted to build a community center, which I have always felt is way too expensive without getting either a partner or, state funding or federal funding or whatever, we cannot do that. In fact, I think we need a partner that would run it because the ongoing costs are exorbitant in and of themselves. But if we were to have that community center, we would have to complete the rest of the parking throughout the park. It's tied to that. If we're to build another field, multipurpose field, we would have to build that other restroom that is on the south side, right? And so those things were things that we considered when we looked at the phasing, and the board at that time said we wanted to have the skateboard park relocated, the equestrian trailhead opened, and the other multi-purpose field built. That was kind of the order that we were going in. We could choose, and I don't know if this is the level that you wanted to get into, but the board could choose that, no, we want to build the basketball courts first. We could choose that, rather than building a 40,000 square feet community center, we're just going to ask for a grant to build a, 4,000 square foot building or whatever. Okay. You could do that. But every time you change what's already approved, then you have to go through that whole amendment process, and you open up potential for other impositions, let's say, unless we can get the county to waive some of those impositions, i.e. the parking lot and those improvements, which are really excessive in my opinion. So, but my understanding always was, and I've read through this because I was intimately involved in that park because it was such a mess when I got on the board. The lease was not an issue. We had a 100-year lease. This is not an issue. We even had an amendment. Okay. And then we had the actual park improvements. How do we manage getting that done gradually over time? And that really is just, what does the community want? And what is the board willing to prioritize? What are we willing to put our efforts going after in terms of grants, but we have other priorities in other parks. And so it's really up to this board to say, it's more important to us that we focus on X, Y, and Z, and maybe we have a plan that each year we're going to put X number of dollars away and continue to go after grant funding to be able to get the next phase that we choose to do. But there's not a noose around our neck is what I'm trying to say. We don't lose anything if we decide not to do anything with it. And if somebody at the county is trying to put pressure on it, I want to know on what basis do they have to put pressure on us? Because I don't recall it being in the lease. I don't recall it being part of any of the development order discussions that we had regarding that park and the amendments that we did. So, but we have leverage as it relates to, we own the land that the fire station is on, and we own the land that the library is on. So, and those are under leases to the county. So, it is complicated. But if we want to start getting into you know, they're pushing us into doing things that weren't part of the original agreement, well, then we need to have some discussions about the whole deal, the whole package, because I think the county is getting a great deal.
I agree. Frank, would you please make sure that we all get a copy of
I-
all of this, the lease and the development order, please, so we all are
And the
up
FCT.
to date. Yeah, that
Yeah.
too. I think we should have
Through
that.
the chair, yeah, they're claiming, and I'm gonna send this to all of you, but this is from Deborah Drum, and it's a long letter, and it's a group of letters, but to achieve compliance with the terms of the grant, FCT requires a timeline as to when the FCT project site will move beyond 40% complete to 100% completed site and enter into a fully compliant status. Additionally, FCT provided specific conditions of the grant that must be complied with as well. So I gotta go back and look at that FCT grant from the DEP and
Okay.
and see how, and give it legal to see if that. Cause I don't know where that's coming from.
It sounds to me like they made a deal and our deal is different with them. But they've still got to make good on their deal and we're stuck in the middle. That's what it sounds like to me. So let's get those documents. Let's organize that, Burgess, please, with legal and compare that and see.
Commissioner was copied.
Right.
Well,
So
and to know what
so-
he's doing to help us. And also the state, because we have representatives and they should be trying to help us. Because we do not have the kind of funding to be held to a timeline.
Sure. So let me kind of try to zoom out, try to understand where we are. So, and Betty had the perfect line, which is it's up to the board to figure out what are the priorities that we're going to pursue. And that's the purpose of this discussion. So it's as clear as mud, right? With all of the pieces. So of the tasks that we have for you, right, are going to be to collect all the background documents and try to make a rational assessment of what's the board's responsibility, what's the county's responsibility, and what's the jeopardy if you don't carry those things out, right? So that's kind of like piece one.
yes.
So piece number two, with respect to this one, I think, is to think about what are your priorities about how this property gets used. So, and I have in my notes, right, there's an exotic removal requirement. There's getting access to the trail, which is why that property was desirable, I think, to the district. There's the trailhead as its own kind of component. And then there's the priority that gets assigned to a laundry list of things that sound like they're in the development. So, and it sounds like you have flexibility. So that's a discussion that you need to have as a board. I don't know that we're going to have it tonight, right? So there's a separate conversation that I think you'll want to work through, which is how important is the community center? How big is it supposed to be? How big is a center that we can afford? And how does that compare to a multi-use field, BMX track, a skateboard track, or a skateboard park, and those other pieces in the park? And so that's kind of how I'm thinking about this property. It's a really important resource. So I don't want to suggest that it doesn't need a lot of discussion, but there are other facilities to talk about.
Right.
This one is the most complex and the most expensive. I think that seems to be a clear takeaway at this point in time. So why don't we task ourselves with working with your administration team to kind of lay all those pieces out, try to dissect it, make it clear, and then bring you back priorities for you to talk about with respect to that.
Excellent.
Does that sound okay?
It does, because we have a lot of other parks and everything is coming to its lifespan. So I'd like to see personally a few really great parks. And rather, I don't want to see us put all our eggs in one basket because there are other parks that, a lot of people enjoy to go to.
Sure.
So,
And actually, why don't we pull up your map of parks? just
Okay,
for-
yeah, let's
to
just look-
zoom out a little
Patty,
bit.
go
'Cause
ahead.
it's kind of like,
Yeah.
they're
So-
at a pretty granular level now,
Right.
right? So if we could zoom out just a moment. So past that,
While we're on the
go for it.
South Expansion Park,
Three more. Sorry?
While we're on the south expansion part,
That's one.
some of the things that concern me, you know, I think it's great that we would put a pump park in and a skate park. I think the community would love having a facility where maybe we could have a community center that would run summer programs and aftercare programs or whatever. But where do we get the funding for that? We don't even have the funding to run our own parks programs, like our own sports programs. So I think that's something we need to focus on, is if we're building something like this, how are we supporting it with staff to be able to have things? I mean, we had a skate park that was placed in the North Campus at Acreage Community Park. There was really never really anybody there to monitor. At one point, there was nobody at the booth. I would go there plenty often with my own son, and there was nobody there at the gate to check who was going in, making sure people were wearing the right safety equipment, sign liability waivers. I can tell you, I never once signed a liability waiver for my son. So how do we incorporate those costs to make sure we're taking care of that? It's not like we're a municipality where we have the parks as, I guess, where we're getting help from other tax entities to help us afford these. So I think we need to know how, or give us ideas or something as to where we can financially support these things. If we're going to have a community building, I think we need to figure out how we can monetize on it to where it winds up becoming a bit profitable for us, you know, like we will have aftercare programs similar to what Royal Palm and, you know, camps for like basketball and so on and so forth. So how do we do that? How do we develop those plans?
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so to answer your question, so for instance, if you, the community center, like for instance, Weston, City of Weston,
Mhm.
they actually contract with the YMCA to run the programs, including the summer camps, out of their community centers and parks. A lot of the skate parks that you see, even if they're in cities, are actually concession, where it's a contract where the concessionaire
Mhm.
is responsible for it and for trying to get the sponsorships to maintain, but they're responsible for insurance, you know, making sure the ramps stay in good condition, trying to either work with the board or with the community to add more, whatever you would call them, skate features, whether it's rails, stairs, ramps, quarter pipes, what have you. So for some of that, there is a way to trigger that or to trigger it with mechanism that isn't necessarily internal or in-house staff.
Right.
So,
Okay.
but with a concessionaire, they're gonna expect, but you know, they're gonna want to sell like drinks or skate.
And how do they keep
meals,
that money?
skate decks,
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it would be important to make sure that before we were to commit to building something like that, that we make sure that maybe we have some sort of commitment from a source that would be willing to contract with us. But again, like you just pointed out, if they can't make money to help support and keep their money with them, how do we?
They usually.
So it makes no sense, like it almost makes no sense having this conversation
Right.
unless.
They charge an admission for like the skate park.
Right.
They want to put on like events like skate
Right.
tournaments so they can make money off that. YMCA, they'll want to charge like usually an annual fee plus
Right.
whatever monthly, like if you want to sign up.
But
for
if they
this-
can't keep that money, we're not gonna get anybody that's gonna wanna come. So we gotta, it almost feels like we're putting the cart before the horse. So we really need to get that before we even commit. I mean, I think it's a great idea to get ideas, and I love the plans. I would love to see our community become more of a community and have those facilities. The other concern, and I'm gonna go to North Campus now, we toured that baseball field and we toured the baseball, what's the building? Press box, thank you. The press box. It's in poor condition. I know I think we might have found some alternatives to where it's not so costly. But we really don't have I don't, first of all, I don't know what the commitment, I think it's important to get AAL at one of our, like the next meeting or something to find out what their commitment is to helping build the softball and the baseball programs there, to make sure that if we're going to put that money into the field, that they're going to be utilizing it. Because right now, I think we only have like a Friday night softball and a travel softball team using it for practice. So it's very underutilized. So I think if the board is wanting to make a commitment to financially upgrading this and putting it into, making it whole, I'd like to know what AL's plans are for that. I would love to see baseball back here. I think it was exciting when my sons played here. I think it was convenient for parents that have multiple kids in multiple sports, that it was all at one park. I actually think that it would probably be used more if it was central to our community versus where AL is playing right now, which is all the way out west on Hamlin. The furthest west you can get in our community, the furthest northwest of our community is where that baseball is. So I think it limits people wanting to utilize it.
Not just to point out what's a county park.
Yeah. It's a counting park.
I wonder, does this tie into what
Which park is that one you're referring to?
Friedland?
So Samuel Friedland is where the
Friedman,
baseball, yeah,
Right.
Friedland. So that's the one where,
I heard Hamlin and I
yeah,
knew you were
I'm
playing
sorry, it's-
baseball. at
you know, I'm
Hamlin.
local. That's just what we call it because Samuel Friedland is a really long name. But,
got it.
so, but it would just be nice to make sure that, again, a commitment that if AAL wants to, if they're committed to bringing baseball utilized more here at the park, hey, I think it's a great idea to go ahead and fix the press box and do whatever we need to do to make sure we're becoming ADA compliant and so on and so forth. I think we also have to figure out parking because that baseball field has been taken over and there's no parking for the participants there, except for what's in the football, which already gets filled up during football season. Otherwise, they have to go all the way to the south expansion. So I think we need to clear up parking issue and the availability over there before we were to.
Not enough parking
I'm sorry.
north of the entrance?
The buildings were always there.
No, but we're parking all of our vehicles in the.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was something that the staff did that was not directed by the.
Right,
board.
so I would say that we need to open up that parking. If we're planning on, I think it's a two-part. I think we need to make sure that we're opening up the parking over there. Because another issue that happened was they put the skate park right in the middle of that limited parking in the north part campus by baseball. And it took away a good half of the parking area that was available. And now we have ITID equipment there. I think we need to figure out where we're putting those so we open that parking. So it's a twofold. We need to make sure we're opening the parking and we need to make sure AAL has a commitment to us.
Sure.
So.
Just quickly, so on the parking, I mean, we have limited, but one of the things that missed after the not last week's meeting, but the prior meeting, did go back and talk with Mr. Robinson. And we're going to come back to the board and look at putting a secure parking area just north of the Publix Plaza, you know,
Okay.
the property
Mhm.
where that's looking for.
Where we're looking at putting that on the cell
Cell
tower.
And we're going back and forth with them from a legal perspective and from a business perspective. Because they're well.
But we'd be able to do both.
Oh, yeah, the way they're designing that is they're putting it, there's that little building, the utility building there. They're putting it basically behind that so we can share that drive. And it's further away from most of the houses, but.
I'm glad we're looking at an alternative so that we can open up that parking. Because I think that's important that baseball parents aren't having to fight for parking in the football area
Right.
or having to go all the way to the south expansion. I think that's going to deter people from utilizing it. So otherwise, I feel like we've done a good plan with Kenny. He's done a good breakout. We did a great bus tour. What was it, in the spring, I guess? It feels forever ago, but we did a great bus tour where we did look at quite a few. Are we going to do another one to where we get to the other parks? Because I thought, yeah,
We tried to schedule it with everyone, but
I know the
I-
summer was a little dicey.
yeah, but I think,
For the bus, so.
Is there a way we could just meet at different parks and just?
well, yeah, you basically just have Sycamore, Temple, Kidscape and Hoffel Park left.
Okay. So I think it would be important that we get to those just to go over
You
what
just
Kenny.
can't- Because it would be considered a public meeting. You can't be together.
Yeah, that's why I suggested one-on-one back then. You know,
Yeah.
get with Kenny, we can all go individually.
Okay,
And then once we're back here,
We can actually meet at the parks. We
Yeah,
just
that's
can't
what
be
I was-
Driving in a vehicle like.
Together.
Together in a
Mhm.
car, going to the next park. That
Yeah.
would
Having
not
little
be-
conversations on the way,
Yeah.
right?
Becomes a problem.
sorry, my pen is slicing my finger because it's
Oh.
got glass, so I'm gonna put that down. Thank you. But anyway, thank you very much. I would like to, because I know, I'm familiar with, Kidscape. I know we're saying there's aging, Temple. I know there's quite a bit of work we have to do down there. Citrus Grove, I know we're working on some of that.
Other than upgrading like the multi-purpose field, Citrus is in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
Kidscape's gonna be your next big thing to really kind of focus on.
Right. Okay, so I just feel, I will definitely get with you on the one-on-one tour, to look at the rest of these parks, to go over, the budget that you kind of presented to us. I really appreciated the work that you did on that, the bus tour that we got to see the 3 parks. I think the one at Acreage Community really kind of opened up our eyes a bit on some of the defects that are there. And I would love to see it become a community park again, that it's not just catered to 1 or 2 sports, that it's catered to multiple sports. I think it'll be an ease for parents. I was a parent that had a kid playing football, flag football, and 2 kids that were playing baseball. So it would be nice to see that we get that back up and running. But I want to make sure we're going to have commitments beforehand. I'd like to know, I'm not going to reiterate everything, but, yeah, that's what I got. I think we're working good on what Kenny was planning.
Are the other sports there operated by AAL or is it different organization? So
It's all under AAL, yeah, but there's only, I think, 2 programs right now, flag football, co-ed football, and flag football. So it's all so it's all football right now, or whatever type of football, that's what's there.
There's
Baseball,
an adult softball
yeah.
playing on Fridays, and then there's some
trying-
baseball happening Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday.
oh, baseball's back?
Yeah. But-
Oh,
so-
that's exciting.
I
Good.
need, so I talked to the AAL about this, right? And they're at Friedland Park. They're happy at Friedland Park. What they don't want is to be forced into a situation where they've got part of their program at Friedland and part of it at Acreage Community Park. And the fact is that you cannot take that whole program and run it at Acreage Community Park North with football, flag football, all the other things going on at the same time. It does not work. There would not be, we don't have enough parking
I just
as
wanted
it
to see
is
why funding
for
it.
flag football and football. And I've been there every day for the past 3 years, so I think I have a pretty good idea of what's going on there, okay? You could not run both there.
Then I
Yeah.
don't understand why we'd even put a penny into that baseball field.
And-
Why
and-
wouldn't we just take it down and make it
Because it's still
another
being used. We
But
still
by-
have
by a Friday? I mean, then it's,
using it. Our community is still using it.
Uh.
We don't need to have the actual league running out of there. They have the adult, they have the travel. What is the other thing that's going on? Is it
Yeah,
just
what is
the travel
baseball
or the
going on over there?
competitive Going on there?
It's between travel, and they've used it kind of as like an overflow is what I
For
was.
extra practice.
Extra practices.
Yeah.
They don't use it for tournaments or big
Right.
stuff, because obviously.
so why would we
Gotta
put
do-
the money into that press box?
Because the press box is not just for baseball. The press box was used for the Acreage Athletic League for everything. They had all their meetings there, all coaches' meetings were there, all board meetings, executive board meetings, sport board meetings, everything was there. And now they have nothing. So
But again, so we're gonna build it just so that somebody can have a meeting? I mean, if we're not going to bring up baseball, if we're not gonna have baseball brought back to us, even if that means a split, or softball, I don't even mean you have to bring baseball, bring softball, build up the softball program. Some sort of commitment that says they are gonna build up teams at this park for those fields, Because to have it just for a Friday night and do what was the amount of money that we were talking about having to invest in order to,
It's minimum probably 650 to $1 million, depending. It's hard to base it off of not seeing plans
Right.
and exactly how it's going to be structured. One of the more inexpensive lifts for the ADA compliance could be at least 150 just in that. So
okay, so we're talking almost $1 million for Friday night softball, overflow practice, and travel softball, and a couple of travel baseball games, or not even games, they're just practicing. So we would put almost $1 million. That just seems like reckless spending to me. For a non-committed, all I'm asking is for AAL to give us a commitment that they are willing to bring back softball. Start building it up and I mean, geez, we've got a high school here that that has softball. I'm sure they would appreciate getting local talent to get training here locally to where they could source players locally. Right now, the high school has no softball. Yeah, but travel, but there's rec. People can't afford travel. Travel is an expensive sport to do, especially in softball and baseball. So why wouldn't we come back to here and start performing our rec? And again, if that's what travel's for and that's what we're going to look at, then why would we spend almost $1 million on a press box and a concession stand that is very limited use? For that, take it down, build a building, build a smaller building for where they can, where they can go ahead and have
Actually,
their
it wasn't
meeting.
my time.
Actually, no, it was mine. It was a meetings, they take it down, put a smaller meeting facility there and add another multi-purpose field to add to the base or the football program that seems to be growing out here for us. Or put a soccer field so that AYSO can come here and play instead of being at the county park. Like why, if we're going to have AEL who is representing, not representing, but pulling a recreation permit through us, and they're supposed to be representing our field or our sports programs, but meanwhile, they're going to the county parks. Why wouldn't we try to develop things to where they can be here?
They initially went because we were not properly maintaining the fields.
Well, then let's
And-
step it up.
And then we found out that actually, we only have one regulation size field, whereas the county has how many? How
And
many?
even those, so I was talking to my husband about this, and back then those fields were not regulation, and the only, even the 13,
Which
15.
ones were not
So the
regulation?
13, 15 field where they were, my son played on the 13, 15 field. We had to stay out here at community because the field out at Samuel Friedland was not the proper size.
But it is now. How many are there? 3?
They have 4
It's,
fields plus 2 in left field with no bathrooms
Okay,
There-
so
there-
and no concessions.
I don't want to get into, because this is,
So if I can try to bring us, kind of like zoom out.
can I just finish? Because I have something I was not done saying that was related to what was stated earlier about mitigation and the south side. And somebody questioned that. The mitigation is whenever we have to clear an area that's over in that park, we have to get rid of the invasives and we have to replace with an exorbitant amount of landscaping. Again, it is something that the county could waive the requirements on, because the cost of maintaining the landscaping they have required us to put in there has been ridiculous and unnecessary.
Rich, go ahead.
The fields at ACP north of the softball fields, we have one regulation size field and the others are much smaller. So I don't ever think there will be a baseball program there. A, there's only 4 fields. B, we have the one large field. And once you're age 13, you're playing 60 feet pitcher's mound, 90 feet bases. And we got one field for that. I actually had the adult softball league approached me last week, Friday, and said, hey, can we get these fields bigger? Well, we have natural area behind them and we have I'm going to go with that's probably not going to happen. So I don't honestly ever see a big baseball program or softball program happening here just because of the field sizes, unfortunately. So I'm with Patty on this. Why would we spend a ton of money on a press box that's actually not going to get the use that it deserves?
Can I ask a question? Is there a way that you could take, there's 4 there, could you take 4 of those fields and put, like, take the other 3, for example, and put another regulation size, so you have 2 regulation size, and then maybe you get additional parking?
I don't know, but here's what I'm gonna ask. We have, it's T-ball. How big does a T-ball field have to be for? I mean, as long as it's regulation for a T-ball, what's,
The size of the,
why isn't that okay? I mean,
But then you're.
Then you've
expanding
got-
Programs
what?
that, because parents do not want to have one kid at Friedland Park and one at Acreage Community Park.
But
We're
that's,
trying to
that,
tell.
that's the incorporation of my question right now.
Yeah.
So if T-ball, is T-ball the regulation size for T-ball is my question. Is so the fields were okay, so if you look here on the map, the one on the bottom right is your T-ball field,
You could
okay?
Probably do
The
T-ball.
one
and
on the
pitch
left
there.
was the 9-10 league, which is basically the beginning stages of kid pitch. The next field on the top left was your 11-12, which is the more advanced, and then your right field, which is obviously a bigger field, was your 13-15. That was the field, I'm telling you, when we were there, and I'm sure they didn't move fences, I don't know what they did, and I should call a friend and call my husband and ask him
Maybe
why
wasn't
it was,
important.
but it's,
It
Wha-
seems to
but-
be important now from everybody that I've talked to. It's so.
I just, and to have, and listen, I had it where my kids were split. I had it where weekdays we were here at this park, and then on Saturday we had to go to the park out west. This way we could help the county, is what the whole reason was for. And we suffered in the older league because we were in left field, literally, where there was two fields that were not properly sized, no restroom, no concession stand, no nothing. It was a good hike to go use the restrooms, or you got to use a porta potty. So,
Yeah.
and I believe that is still the same design today. So why, if we're going to do anything, I think we check and see if these fields are age and designed appropriately for the ages that they were meant for back in the day, and try to recruit AAL back here, or the softball league.
EAO's much too big for it. That's what I'm.
Are they?
They've thrown.
I don't know. I want to know the numbers to know how many games,
I
because
think this is.
we have the exact same fields minus one that they use up at Hamlin. They have 4 fields plus one
But why
field that
shouldn't
they
be
utilize.
using the county park where our county tax dollars is paying for it? Why do?
Well,
why
then
do-
why do we pay for this then? That's my point.
Okay, so I'd like to go back to the $1 million, because the $1 million is not just to build a press box. My understanding is that $1 million, and a good chunk of that money is what we're saying we need to do to make it ADA accessible. And when we had our tour, I thought we had discussed some alternative solutions that wouldn't require that kind of money being spent. So I don't want to belabor this anymore, but obviously we are not going to agree. I do not think that we should be telling the AAL that they have to be running their program one way or another. I think that there are other issues that relate to this that make it next to near impossible. Parking is the big one right now. And I would not be opposed. So just think about this. I do not want to go through the whole amendment process for the South Side, but I would not be opposed to looking at that other area and saying, would this be better to develop it in a certain way if we have the need in the community? For example, the tennis courts, do we want them to be tennis courts, or do we want, some to be tennis court and some to be pickleball, So those are the things that I think we should be focused on. But if we think that there is a need that we want to have baseball and everything that the AAL runs in one location, then I think we have to take a different look at that park and say, is there a better way to use this land? And if that is worth it to us, then we have to understand that it's a process, and it means sacrificing other things that would be going there. So, I want to leave it at that. But I also want to say that the most important thing that I hear from everybody in the community, we've talked about this, is more shade sales at our playgrounds and more shade in our park areas. And besides that, I thought our plan of doing one park a year was actually a pretty good plan and it worked pretty good. All of a sudden, it seems like we have all these things that have to be done today. Now, I understand Kids Skate Park. You know, from what I'm seeing, it seems to be rapidly deteriorating. I think it's had some help. Okay. And that goes back to, I think, not having sufficient staff throughout our parks, throughout the whole district, throughout the time that it's being used. And we have evidence of that with respect to the damage that's being done throughout the district. I'm just going to leave it at that. And to save you guys some time, probably in 2018, we looked at actually it was before 2018 because Ralph Baer was still on the board and he wanted to know whether we could use that location beside the park or the plaza for additional storage for our vehicles. And the response from the county, and I have the communication somewhere, basically says that we would have to build it like a contractor storage yard with concrete walls that were 10 feet tall. So at that time, the cost of doing that was outrageous. And of course, there was also the concerns of the board for security. And we decided that that was not the best path forward. However, it seems that our current location is also not very secure because how people are getting in there and causing damage seems to be a little strange. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think that's something else that we need to be considering with respect to our parks.
So you two look a little puzzled there. So somebody went in and shot out all the windows and all the maintenance vehicles a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, it was quite a bit of damage. Yeah,
But it wasn't just that there.
yeah, it was also, yeah.
The other piece of my puzzlement is, at least years ago when I was my daughter played softball at the fields that we've been talking about. And, you know, the parking area there doesn't have 10-foot high walls and contractor storage yard and all this other stuff. So this is okay, you can have it like it is now, or you can ask me for all this stuff and I'm just going to keep it like it is now. That's what
Right,
That's a-
right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. No,
It sounds like.
I
Yeah.
hear it. I
Okay,
hear it.
let's, yes, let's
Because
get,
I know we have a hard stop.
right,
Elizabeth has a whip over there, right? So.
yeah.
I don't even.
A cane, he pulls out of the room. So we have 45 minutes left in this evening. Okay, so we can zoom out from a really good discussion. And we have a lot of notes on ACP, which is great. But we can kind of get back up to viewing the district. So what I'm hearing is a need for determining what are your priorities for ACP, because it doesn't sound as though those are clear to me.
Right.
So
And what is the
there's-
community's priorities?
there's a lot-
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of things you want to do.
Right.
They can't all happen at the same time.
Right.
So figuring out what are your priorities, it sounds like that's a really important facility. It has the potential to do a lot of really good things. There's some complexity into where you're allowed to actually do those things because you have restrictions that we need to better understand. And then as outside of tonight's discussion, what are your individual priorities? What are the most important things you want to have happen at that park? We need to kind of see how that went. Because I think there are 4 very different sets of priorities that I'm hearing. And so that's a request that I have that we'll work with your staff to try to figure that out. So we can then take that information and give you a recommendation. It sounds like, and I can have a bad idea. It's okay, right? So I think it sounds to us like these are your priorities and you can react to that, right? And then that can put you on a path to make some rational set of investments, because that's the other piece that comes along, which is how much are you going to spend on this part versus PS, you have 9 other facilities that also need some attention in tonight's discussion. So, and what's the priority for improving those? Do they all get improved? Do some of them become more important than others? Is it one park a year that gets priority? So that's some information that we'd like you to explore. And I know Rich wanted to jump in.
Sure. You want a high priority? New clay,
Pardon?
new clay on the infields for those 4 fields. 100%. They are being used. They are being used. The adult softball league, you got the travel softball league there. The area is not big enough for a rec program to have all sorts of different ages of kids, but the adult softball league is going very well. There's a travel team that's there, and we could probably get these fields in a little bit nicer shape. The grass is looking really good, and now we need to get the infield redone. And I'm nervous somebody's going to get hurt. It's in bad shape. So
So.
and the batting cage. We have a very nice batting cage out there that needs a new net. And we got a couple L screens that I've talked about recently that need to be some new L screen replacements. And I think that would new clay, the batting cage re-netted and carpeted, and some L screens out there at those fields would be very beneficial because they are getting use, but we're not going to be able to have in my opinion, a rec program there with all sorts of different ages of kids playing it with multiple teams.
What
too
is
small.
that term that L?
L cage, an L screen, L cage. I'm sorry, the batting cage is
Yes.
for where they hit in.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the L screen for like when a coach is pitching or something like
So it
that.
doesn't get hit.
That's right.
It's my understanding
Gotcha,
that,
thank you.
Thank
it's
you.
my understanding that that was paid for by the Acreage Athletic League, and because the baseball league is no longer there, they're responsible at the county, and they actually have to pay for the one at the county park.
Didn't know it
So-
had a name.
And they are.
So does the district have a park master? Develop park master? I know there's an inventory. You don't have a master plan yet, so that's an area to consider perhaps. So, and we've worked with a number of communities that have gone through this kind of process, and it's hard when you have so many demands, so many different facilities, and it's not kind of been an organized method. And so a park master plan can give you a chance to get into the capital improvements, for example, Rich, like what you're describing, to kind of identify in a perfect world scenario, if money was no object. This is really the way to start that conversation. In best case scenario, these are the improvements that we would have, get them all kind of identified, each of them. So, and then give you a chance to prioritize those. So there's a capital improvements part of that master plan. And then there's a programming part, which is a little different. And I'm hearing from each of you different thoughts on what are the most important activities that should be undertaken. There's park staffing in places like a skate park. There's which leagues or which types of baseball or softball or t-ball are the priorities that you want to focus on. And so there's a programming aspect. Do you carry it out independently? Do you work with a public partner like the county? Do you work with a private partner like a YMCA or another entity to implement that stuff? So that's kind of a separate but also important part of that kind of master plan discussion. So I just throw that out there to you guys to think about as a board, because it gives you a chance on a much longer term basis, typically to find efficiencies and be more effective. Those are the two goals that we have as government entities, right? We want to be efficient and effective in what we do. And that might be something to think about as you travel this journey. The strategic plan can recommend how to approach that. But that's an exercise that might be worth the investment because it makes your dollars go further and they're spent more wisely when there's a kind of a larger scale understanding of what you're trying to arrive upon at the end of the day.
If I could, it also would help you be more, I don't know if opportunistic is the right word, but opportunities arise and you have a grant that's like, oh, this grant will only pay for thus and so thing. Well, I already have that in my master plan. So snip, 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 and kind of to the points earlier about, there may be certain improvements that are supposed to happen, but also the sequencing it can really change around. And so different opportunities arise with that. And if I could ask a question, are you all able to apply for FERDAP grants?
We received.
You can and you do. Okay, good. All right. That can
That's
be a
normally
great
how-
recreation
how
funding.
we, Yeah, pay for our
Okay.
playgrounds.
And what's
Cool.
when you're for the park master planning that you're doing now, the park planning, is it on a 1 year, a 3 year, a 5 year horizon? What's the horizon line typically working?
So basically, what we're trying to do is just on an annual operating budget, figure out which park, as Ms. Argue alluded to. So we don't really have a parks master plan. We've talked about coming up with some plans specifically for like Downers Park or something like that, like a new slate. But we never really talked about the entire park system on that scale.
Right. Is that something that is, do you think that's a good idea for you guys to explore as a board?
Absolutely.
So I'd like to say, because I heard a comment being made about, we don't need as many parks, maybe have a couple of great ones. And I think that the way that the perception was in the community and past board members was that Acreage Community Park was our one big park, and all the other parks throughout the district were to serve those individual areas. If you look at, the map of our parks, pretty much there's a park, that serves each area
Right.
of the district. At least the area of the original acreage community.
Sure.
Okay. And I think those are important. Some of them are better than others. But I think they're all important. They serve multiple purposes, not just, it's a recreation park where, the kids are going and playing and hanging out and whatever, but we also have school bus stops there. We have bikes being parked there. We have, during the day, you have homeschooling stuff that goes on in different parks. So there's a multitude of things that are going on. And I think that those neighborhood parks are just as important as Acreage Community Park. However, they were always somewhat low maintenance in the sense that we weren't trying to make every park,
Fancy.
no, it's like basically you have a 10-acre square. There's a walking path around with some exercise equipment and, various things at different parks and usually a playground that served various ages, right? So, and then Kidscape Park became the crown jewel for all ages. And Kidscape, I would say, for the younger families with children up to, say 10 years old, Kidscape, maybe not even 10, I don't know. I kind
10
of,
is solid.
yeah. So, but it really was the crown jewel for the young families.
Sure.
And I think that it's important. But like I said, I think that, if I was to say what's my priority, I would say the playground at Kidscape Park and shade sales at Kidscape Park. But I also think shade sales, trying to get them at all of our parks is important because this is Florida. And when you don't have shade where playgrounds are, the kids are very limited on when and how often they can use that playground. And I think that, I don't know, it seems to me that if you have a covered area over a playground, you'd actually be extending the life because it's not exposed to the sun. So I don't know, but,
Gotta watch the vandalism.
huh?
Gotta watch the vandalism.
Right.
Right,
We
and-
put them up and then what was it, 2 weeks later, they were destroyed.
So,
It's
And they're
fine.
$50,000 a piece
so
almost.
I have some ideas on how to handle that too, because they do things like you put grease at the top of the poles so they can't get up there. And then let them slide
Treat
down.
them like,
Well, and
squirrels.
Yeah.
Trying to get to the bird
So,
box.
so
Where do
anyway.
I put the peanut butter?
yeah,
And one more thing, I think we beat these parks down pretty good here tonight. Let's talk about some of the other things. But something I also heard and recently was the possibility of PBSO looking for a substation somewhere out here, and that press box area could possibly be an outpost for them, a substation. So if that's something that is possible, maybe that would be definitely more
Did
And
they
to-
not have one now?
out here. No.
Yeah, no?
gives you surveillance also. So,
Good.
so zooming back out, so we have park master plan idea. There is, you have finite resources and more demands than resources, right? So It seems like Acreage Community Park as a 700-pound gorilla can take every dollar and still be hungry. And you wouldn't have dollars left for doing it. So kind of figuring out the balance of investment between the whole park system and Acreage Community Park is something to support. So I don't have a recommendation for you yet, but it's an issue that we're gonna have to resolve.
Right.
And
We
the-
did
and
a
the new
lot.
lights.
Oops, sorry.
Pardon?
And new lights.
Well, so there's
And
so there's-
lightning rod.
There's
detectors,
ACP, there's
lightning-
all the stuff related to ACP. It's a long list of things. And then you have these 8 other parks, right, that are also hungry for some kind of investment. So shade structures, by the way, we just finished up a park and rec master plan for another municipality, and that's the #1 demand from residents. And so one of the things that, that kind of master planning exercise lets you do is understand how trends are changing and be able to respond to them. Like it used to be tennis, and now it's pickleball. So
Right.
it's the fastest growing court sport, right, in the United States, and projected to continue for a while. So, so understanding how your demographics have changed as a place, and how demands have changed, so that you can.
I've torn
Keep
down
up.
4 racquetball courts, I think, over my career at Green Acres. We
Yeah.
demolished them because there was no, you know,
And everything.
And they're
built with
building
good
an indoor one in Westlake, by the way.
oh,
It's, yeah, it's all
Paddle.
paddle ball, but yeah.
Paddle, and the other opportunity I think that you might have to explore is, do you want to try to find some partnerships with other entities to provide services that your residents want, but maybe they don't cost you quite as much especially in the staff facilities.
Right.
So that's another area that you might want to explore as a board. Is your light on, Kenny? 'Cause you want to jump in.
No, the light's on, I'm good.
Got it, okay, I just didn't.
He's just
wanna-
gonna leave it on until he's ready.
Yeah. I mean,
One thing I do want to note is that a lot of, maybe not ACP, but many of our other parks are approaching or have exceeded their life expectancy because many of them were built in the early 2000s. So, yes, some of them,
Playgrounds.
I said the parks.
the
in
park
general.
itself.
The parks, so like basketball courts, tennis courts, but in some of the playgrounds as well. Yeah.
Schedule of replacing a playground every single year.
um,
So, it's not like.
they
So-
need a matrix.
So having a chance to lay that out, right? Here's the last time we replaced this playground, and here's the last time we resodded this field, and the last time this baseball field got new clay, right? So kind of understanding what the life cycle is will give you a chance as a board to be more efficient in how that replacement happens.
Yeah, so the
Right.
point was that some of them are reaching life expectancy with courts. And for instance, you brought up racquetball courts, nobody really plays it anymore, they use it for their tennis practice. But,
Is it necessary to spend money to rip it out? I don't see the.
We had other stuff to put there. So, I
Well,
mean, yeah, it's
yeah.
only if you need to
Is
put
there
something
something else
there.
that goes there?
foundation for pickleball.
Does it count pickles?
I think one of the things that, I think one of the things that Kenny had brought up was, and when he was coming and he talked to us about our parks last year, was to take the racquetball courts down and put in an additional pickleball because of the demand. Because right now we have painted pickleball lines over tennis court lines and, sometimes there's a Sunday group that wants to go and play on both courts and, get 4 games going and it's converted to the tennis. So if we could add more pickleball courts, then, and that makes sense and we can do it feasibly and maybe not tomorrow, but in 5 years, make it a 5-year plan, that would be worthwhile to see. I know Kenny did a great job. Like I said, I don't know if you received his report on saying like the aging out of our items that are at the park. So maybe it would be a good idea to get that from him so you can better see where we're at age-wise. We're in the middle of getting ready, I believe, to resurface our basketball courts and our tennis courts at the Temple Park. And there's something else we have big that's going on. But it's basically resurfacing. We're putting a floating surface on so they can be utilized again because we shut them down because they were dangerous.
Sure.
They were tripping hazards. So I think we're working. I think Kenny has done a really good job. Burgess has done a great job with trying to alert us and let us know the life expectancies are coming and where we need to start repurchasing new equipment. I think that would be a good thing to help you maybe guide on
Yeah.
what would
Yeah,
be.
yeah. Yeah, and we can, and we'll work with Kenny and Burgess to try to collect all the
Yeah.
information.
Mhm.
Makes it easier. to understand.
So like what Burgess was saying before, one of the things we noticed when, especially when I started looking at the permitting, the aging of everything, it all was built about the same time, so it's all failing at the same time at this point. And not all of it was built to today's code. So a lot of these foundations, like what they're talking about, basketball and tennis courts, that foundation is worthless. I mean, you'd be spending $500,000 to pull that up, redo it correctly and put it down, which is why we suggested the floating court to buy time. That's the biggest challenge they're running into, is everything all at once.
Sure.
From roof issues to, I mean, you name it, it's.
And it's like knowing that it's like knowing the hurricane is coming, right? Trying to get yourself prepared. So, and that sounds like that's kind of where you are as a district, all arrived, kind of in that same 3 to 5 year time frame. So you know it's all going to fail at that same time also. The relationship with Palm Beach County is one of the discussion questions that we have. We danced around. I think that we need to, as your staff on this, work with your team to understand where the lines really are drawn on the property at ACP, to figure out what latitude you have to adjust that. So, I mean, I looked at the aerial that popped up for a moment, with the baseball fields, and yeah, it looks like you have some pretty significant limitations where the lines are drawn down. So we'll try to better define them. One of the ideas that had arisen as we were walking through the background documents, I read it somewhere, was the idea of maybe not keeping acreage community park and shifting that responsibility to the county. And that doesn't sound like that's where the sentiment of the board is. So that sounds like a piece that's a piece that you want to maintain. Don't know for me. Just to explore that. So
Is that even possible?
yeah, with your
What would they do with
responsibilities
it?
as a board.
I mean, when I brought that up in the past, ACP is obviously very expensive and the South also. I like the ACP park, but I really like to figure out something more with how we're going to continue with the South portion.
With the responsibilities that are identified. It sounds like there isn't immediate. There's not a timeline associated with those improvements. They just kind of loom, right?
Curiosity, because I want to hear why. And because I'm indecisive on it, but why would you say hell no to transferring ownership back over to county? And it's honestly an innocent question because I just want to know why, so I can weigh out.
Many of it has already been discussed.
Microphone.
One, the deal was complicated to begin with. I feel like every time in the past, the board has made deals with the county, we've gotten the short end of the stick. And we continue to. And this is our crown jewel of our community. And I think that when it is done, that there will be something for everyone there and everyone will be happy. Unfortunately, we don't have enough money to just do it overnight, but that if we prioritize it as a board and we say, like we're talking about in a master plan, what we did was we did a park every single year. And then there was Acreage Community Park South took a lot of money to get cleaned up what was there. Okay. But I'm just going to leave it at that. But it would not be a good deal for us to turn it over to the county. In addition to its strategic location, it would not be a good deal to turn it over to the county because the county would like to make 140th a major thoroughfare road. And if we turn that park over there to them, that just makes it that much easier. It takes away the neighborhood aspect to our community. To me, it is not the right direction for our community. And Acreage Community Park North, we own. Acreage Community Park South. And understand, we used to own a good chunk of that land there was some trade-offs that were done because of the need for the FCT funding. And because of that, they did this deal to get the funding. That funding is now and has been the source of the problem. When Gary Dunkley was on the board, you know, what he wanted to do was to set up some sort of environmental, I forget what he called it, where the FCT could be turned over to that organization. And when legal looked into it, the county could turn it over to a municipality. They cannot turn it over to a special district. And I believe, if my recollection is, they could not turn it over to like a nonprofit organization either. But that's kind of the direction that he wanted to go. The second thing was, we could approach this differently and have been trying to work in other directions to get that turned over to us and not to have a lease. And that is the best case scenario, in my opinion. I think that that is an asset to our community, and to give it up would be a big, big mistake. So.
It's a bargaining trip for the 140th, because you feel like if we.
I said a
that-
lot
that-
more than that. but
I
yeah.
understand, but the gist of that was that the fear that if we turn it over to county, it would be an easier play for them to do the 140th. thoroughfare.
Absolutely. That would be one part.
Right. I don't know. I don't know if it's fair. I definitely want more information on that, because it just doesn't seem fair. That we're holding back on development on this. I mean, the way we get things done, it's, how long did it take us to even get okay, so my recollection is we had put a field, a multi-purpose field back there with the playground, and then we redeveloped it and put the field with the track around it now.
No, that was always the location.
No, there was a park that ran this way, and now it runs this way. I'm telling you, Mike, been here 23 years. We played on that field.
Okay, well.
Okay,
in
so anyways,
2016, when I
excuse
got on
me, I'm
board, that was the
talking.
plan.
Okay, again, we put money into it and then we redesigned it again. So, and it's just taking a very long time. I remember probably 15 years ago, neighbors were upset that the community park or community building wasn't going in. And it's still not going to go in.
And then-
And it's just,
Sure.
excuse me. And it just seems that it's not fair that we're holding back on the development because of money. And I think maybe we look at ways that we can protect ourselves and maybe look at that option. I
I try to run some scenarios. We'll work with your staff, we'll work with the county, we'll run scenarios. Keep ownership of the park. These are the responsibilities. These are the costs. These are when they reasonably concur. Different ownership of the park, that same process. So you have that as a board.
Any
How
scenario that
resolve
you
that.
look at with respect to turning that over to the county needs to include us being compensated for everything else that we've given up.
Right.
Because-
Yeah, we'll try to kind of crunch all that into a set of scenarios. So you have that to just look at as.
And I doubt the
form.
county has the money.
So, and as a matter of fact, in preparation for tonight's plan, I went through the county's recently adopted park master plan, just about this year. There aren't any dollars that are assigned to the park. It's not on the county's list responsibilities. So, so that's an area to explore also. Find out if the park came to you, county, when could you program dollars to make these improvements? So you
Would
have
you
that
like to share with
information.
us?
So.
I don't look at my phone. I don't pick up my phone, but you've been sitting there text messaging the whole meeting, and that's public record.
Okay,
Okay,
Please.
so it's 7:42.
can we try to look at some other parks
We,
while we have 20 minutes left?
so there are some general policy areas to touch. Life cycle replacement. So, and organizing your approach for life cycle. replacement. Talked about shade structures. We talked about repositioning facilities in those parks to meet current trends. pickleball to, or tennis to pickleball, for example. So there's some of that in there also. You did touch on surveillance and staffing, within the Parks Department,
And we need to update our lightning detectors as well.
lightning.
Yeah,
Okay, so there's maybe a resiliency piece.
Are
that
those
could-
just at ACP or do you have those in other places?
They're actually at the school, so we don't need them.
Oh,
It's like, we're right beside
that-
the school.
For all.
So-
parks.
can you hear them from?
For at Acreage Community Park. Yeah,
Do you have any other active field?
we don't have them at any of the other Hamlin, Friedland.
Any?
You- Through the chair. When you say through active parks, what do you mean? Like organized sports,
Organized
correct?
sports playing there?
ACP is the only one besides the equestrian.
So,
Citrus Grove.
Citrus
you
Grove.
know, there's,
Well, sometimes they do play organized basketball, but
If I can-
practices and.
we just got back from conference yesterday and I actually talked to Corey from Thorgard. He's one of the guys that actually has our system over here right now. And they have a new system that they can put in a park that'll actually, you'll have the main hub here, but it'll send the signal out to within like 2 miles of that. So if we have parks that are strategically in those areas, we could have the horn in those areas, so it actually will trigger for both. We talked about doing that with north side because we have a system there, but it needs to be upgraded. It's like 25 years old, just like everything. That could actually send a signal to south side so that when that new artificial turf field's out there, it'll actually activate on both. So in the equestrian park is another area that we definitely need it. And Mr. Hanson saying, as we're building new multi-purpose fields and those are becoming more active, we probably should have something there.
In the good news category, there's a lot of money for resiliency. So there are grant dollars that are available.
And they did let me know something I didn't know before, that they do offer a 5-year finance plan for it too. So I wasn't aware of it.
Well, we get a grant, then you can actually just pay for it outright.
Um, have you explored the revenue generation that comes along with your facilities also?
very, very little recently when we did the programs. And really basically all we did was to have a non-resident fee and update some of the other fees. So we did do that with the parks plan for this fiscal year.
But that brings up,
Yeah.
with respect to Hamlin House is actually our community building. And it has not been utilized properly since COVID. And, it used to be promoted. We used to have a staff member that was a part-time staff member dedicated to that and to running events there. And I'd like to see that happen more.
Okay, so the programming function. So, and that's the type of thing that you can explore in that master planning process, which is on the programming side. Are there revenue-based activities that you want to have happen? How do you want Hamlin House to be programmed? How do you market it? Who do you partner with it to get it to be done by that? So that's an area that is something really, the PR person could get on that. Sure. As part of the marketing for that. Are there special events there? Yeah, yeah. So, okay.
And
One thing we haven't touched on, yes, Rich.
revenue. So what about potential interlocal agreements with neighboring cities? Obviously, we're gonna have people, Avenir, we know they're coming. Westlake, we know they're gonna come here. You can't walk around the football fields here and talk to these residents. They're from Wellington, Westlake, and their kids are actually traveling out here because they like the program so much, which is great. So maybe look into some different, ways of interlocal agreements to utilize our parks maybe a little bit better and receive some more funding back to the district. I know that gets a little complicated. But-
It does the non-resident fees for that? Is that handled through AAL? So
Well, that's,
along the line.
that's really good. That's a good thing too. Otherwise. Right.
Not fair.
Skating.
So
Our people go to other experts there, we pay.
Sure.
Right. Oh, no, that's perfectly fair. Yeah. no.
From here, everybody was the same, but it wasn't really an issue because it was mainly Big Ridge residents until the past 5 years. Now suddenly. got it.
Sure. So along the lines of revenue, can we talk a bit about park assessment fees? How fees are structured in the district? And is that structure working, or are there adjustments that are necessary to the way park fees are collected?
That's something that staff with the new CFO consultant that we're going to be working with the engineer, with the district engineer and legal on that, Dr. Delaney, and determine, instead of doing per acre, maybe it's per lot. One of the things that I've talked about, we've really never brought anything forward formally for it, would be, do you want to activate other areas? Because out of the units, 12 units pay into parks, basically, out of the 20 some active units that we have. So especially and this is something I talked to Mr. Foyer, engineer, about, was as we have these new communities coming online, like Vintage Oaks or Rawlings Estates, they should automatically be paying into the parks. For instance, Rawlings Estate, that's just over by the M2 impoundment. It's close to Sycamore and Downers Park. The Vintage Oaks, well, it's not close to any parks. It's much more convenient for them to drive down the road to acreage. And by the way, their drainage is going through Coconut Park, which, our residents are paying for the maintenance of that. It is for North Lake. It does funnel water from North Lake and other locations. So that's something, I like to look at, but it is a potentially, well, it's not potentially, it would be a very politically controversial issue, because people, just like with schools, oh, well, I don't have any students or kids, why should I pay for schools? So, but
Are these communities that you mentioned, are they inside the
they
ITFD
would all
boundary?
be within the legislative boundary.
Oh,
And some of them already have agreements, like for instance, with GL Homes, they already are under not an order, but similar to development.
so setting up the
agreements, so
park
they
thing,
would be exempted from it, and
Yeah.
the areas to the west, like out toward past the L8 that are within our boundaries. But we really haven't spent an inordinate amount of time identifying areas, but there are areas even within acreage proper that should be paying that currently are not.
And that's something that's underway.
It's
That now-
something, yeah, that we have to bring to the board to see how far they want us to go down that road first.
Through the chair. The acreage proper, all the units that are considered acreage proper are paying into.
Well,
parks,
yeah, I meant
The-
the whole area, like
Right.
Delwood.
Which is not acreage
Yeah, I
proper,
know.
right? So,
Yeah, residential.
and the problem with those ones, and it is now, is that they're larger properties. And so the way that our assessment is right now, those ones, they're paying per acre times 5 or times 7 or times 10. And it's not fair to them to be paying a disproportionate amount. In particular, most of them do not have children that are using our parks, but we're a special district. We're assessed for benefits that are direct and indirect. And the other thing is that any kind of change, I wouldn't say it's politically motivated or politically charged. I think it's expensive to go through the process, because we cannot make any change like that with actually amending our water control plans that would entitle us. And the last time we went through a water control plan, which was the R3 road plan, it took 5 years to go through. So it's going to be a process.
Is there an equity concern that those residents can access parks?
There is, in my opinion, there is an argument that can be made about that, but there's also an argument that can be made
that if they're assessed the same way as we are, then it's inequity. We're creating inequity, right?
Because the acreage versus the lot.
Right,
Right.
right. Because the average acreage lot is 1.15. Some people have 1.5, some people have 2, some have 3, but the majority are 1.15.
Right.
Okay. And so somebody who has 5 acres doesn't have kids, and in those areas, there's not a lot of kids in those areas, then they would be paying 5 times what I'm paying, and they don't have kids, that they're not utilizing the park system. Not that adults use the park system too, but it was always determined in the past that the majority of, like, for example, with Santa Rosa Groves, when we activated them, we determined that they don't use our schools, they don't use our parks in the same way as everybody else. And it would be exorbitantly expensive to try to assess them in the same way that we do everybody else.
Which I suppose is an
But that's
argument
not the
for
only
being
area.
Lot-based versus acreage,
Well,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
because there's a tie to how many housing.
Yeah,
units.
well, there's that, but there's also going to be this influx potentially from Wellington as they build in their area that they annex. And certainly we're seeing it in Palm Beach Gardens where they have annexed into what was traditionally unincorporated. And for instance, they want to build apartments off of 140th and Hamlin. So those people probably, those, yeah, will be going. Yeah. Yep.
Sure. So it sounds like there's a methodology,
That may have to
Analysis,
make it
right?
equitable.
Right.
So the people that are paying under the 1.15, the, formula for per acre, you're gonna have this influx of dwelling units that totally blow that apart, but they'll be benefiting, I think, greatly from having that. And then, as we all know, if you have a park near your house, even, I forget what the exact distance is, there's added value to your property and things like that. So there's some benefit to having more people involved in paying for the parks and keeping them at a better level and making it more equitable possible for taxpayers.
sure. And it's like the library system, right? Not everybody uses the library, but everybody pays. It's considered a benefit to value and quality. Of life. Right.
But they probably have a private library, a fancy house.
But that's okay. It sounds like you're in the process of kind of analyzing.
And it just adds to one more thing and then I'll be quiet.
Okay, so we have
The other thing
5
that we
minutes.
really haven't touched on is the fact that we have a changing populace out here. And they're just going to be expecting different things, and how are we going to address that with our parks?
Sure.
So that master plan is excellent.
Sure. Well, it gives you a chance to look at all the demographics. So it's actually a very educational process. So because mostly there's things I don't know. I'm reminded of that every day. So you get into park planning, it's amazing how many things there are that you don't know.
Mhm.
So
What an L screen.
There-
Now I know.
See,
I know there's a. now I know
everything is a
there's
learning
name for that
experience
thing.
every day.
Done. Done.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I have a whole series of follow-up items that I know that we take the lead on. We have a conversation with several county departments to have about
Mhm.
ACP. We'll work with your staff, of course, to come back with some scenarios about what happens with ACP going forward. We'll try to structure what a park master plan might want. So you have that to consider. Yes. Yeah, well, so, and one of those pieces, as Tom's reminding me that there's a team, it's a multidisciplinary conversation to figure out what's the deal with ACP. What are your responsibilities? When are they supposed to happen? How much is it gonna cost? What land can you use? What land is off?
And we lift the restrictions.
Where are the restrictions?
What is it going to take to do so?
I think we
You
could,
get out the
a
restrictions.
good
Right.
summary memo or white paper on what are the ground rules? So that we can have a good conversation
Yeah.
about, okay, how do we navigate those? Can we change those? What do we, are they great? Are they asking us for something they have no right to ask us for?
Try to.
I don't know. Maybe.
I'm breaking my promise here because there is one
No.
other thing. So Westlake has been delayed in building their park. And if they continue on the path of connecting 60th, building 60th and connecting it to the east portion of 60th, and that's something we're going to have an influx of their residents even more so.
Why are they delayed on their? By
They-
choice?
They did not. get money from
Yeah,
the
they didn't-
legislature.
They didn't get their
And
appropriation.
And they don't have
Okay.
enough money.
Why?
I don't work
Oh,
for
okay.
them, so I don't know, but I know when I met with King Castle a while back,
Okay,
he
interesting.
had some concerns about the likelihood of those fields being built. So as their population increases,
Yeah.
Kids are gonna come play here.
potentially.
So,
Um,
so I don't think that we should be looking at our parks and planning for outside, whatever. That, that to me, I mean, we already have enough of a burden in dealing with them. And I think we already get, with respect to the non-resident fee, we'll be getting that. But I do not want to be going down this road where we're planning for new expectations, cityfied people that are moving into the acreage. And now we're trying to pander to what they'd like to see at our parks. I'd like to keep our parks the way they are. That's why I don't think that we need to be ripping out racquetball courts because they do get used for other things. Unless we decide that we have a need for, this or that, I think we have a hard enough time maintaining what we have. So we don't need to be building anything in addition to meet somebody else's needs. For example, and I'm just going to leave it at this, Hopeful Park is one where the board has made decisions year after year after year, whenever it's come up, since I have lived in this community, to not build a restroom there because it was too expensive. Okay, so we have a portable restroom there. That was the solution. For a long time, we had no restroom. Then we put in a trailer that was a portable restroom. But the cost in 2014, as I recall, it was going to cost $150,000 and everybody choked on that cost. Today, it would probably cost $1.5 million, So I don't support building for that. I support building for the service of the Indian Trail residents, and that's it.
I don't think anybody's
Okay.
looking at
That's
it like
not-
that. That is not the point.
It's
Uh,
really the wear and tear of your
eh,
facility.
Right, exactly. Right. We,
Coming in, using
Yeah.
the
Good point.
yeah,
Yeah.
that is not, okay. We're running out of time. So Patty, quick.
But, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead,
it
finish,
is- it
please.
is Where I was going. with
Mhm, I
that is,
know.
How do you prevent that? At-
Right. But
it's-
and does AAL want us to prevent it? Because maybe they want those registrants to come in here.
Yeah.
That's not, there's two separate issues.
Right.
The Acreage Athletic League is collecting the non-resident fee, which is
I
coming
don't,
to
I don't think
Indian
that's
Trail.
what he was referring to.
that's what you
We,
just
we
said.
already went through that. We know we're getting the non-resident fee through the league. What Burgess is trying to say is that all these other residents are using our parks. We've got new residents that are still residents, and we can't just say, well, you don't count because you've only been here for 2 years. Those people might want to play pickleball, that just like those women here. Oh, we want the pickleball courts done. It doesn't matter how long you've been here. What we need to focus on is what we already have and getting that up to par before we can really think about adding anything new. Right. So, and that's where we're all in agreement. So I don't know where we're going with this,
Well,
but it's 8:01. So you got 30 seconds,
yeah, well,
please.
basically where I was going with it is how do you prevent those non-residents from
You
pushing
can-
the AAL to start programming against what the intent of those parks are? And then you have this political dynamic that happens.
Right.
That's all I was talking
Right.
about.
And
is
we have to
preventing
prevent that.
from
Right. And we
happening.
have
Yeah.
to work with the AL on that. Okay. Doc, you got what you need? It's a lot. It's, and we may need to do another, I hate to even say it, but if we need to
We appreciate.
do a
that.
part point two,
We will.
2.0.
We will try to work very closely with to be able to come back to you with a document to react to.
Thank you.
So we've got a
Appreciate
lot
it.
of input in these 3 workshops. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And will
And-
the
and-
residents be able to put feedback in that?
They will. They will. Not when we get to, yeah, we'll get to the public point. Absolutely. I've been saying that all along. All right. And just, yeah, when you get with staff, just go over the other parks that we didn't get to touch on. So you could see the needs there and what the replacement and all of that needs to be done, just so you have the big picture, right? Because we didn't get to all that stuff. So, all right. Thank you. All right.
Thank you very much.
That's it. Meeting is adjourned. Our next meeting, let me just remind everybody, September 9th at 6:30, we have the joint workshop with the Equestrian Trail Committee. So September 9th. So you want to, yeah, I think that's a good idea. I wish we could have had that first and then had this, but the timing just didn't work out. But if you guys could be here for that, because I think that's important, because that's, well, it's not really a park. It's part of the recreational function of the community. All right.
That's a mobility.
All right. You're on it. Okay. She's on it. I know that. So I know she's on it. I didn't know you were here. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Meeting adjourned.